Vote New Zealand First
Order.
in 2014.
Order. The next four calls are 5-minute calls. Honourable Chris Finlayson. Right.
Well, I only need 5-minute calls, 5-minute call to deal with that rant. I think he's been waiting for years to turn up and give that speech on the foreshore and seabed. After he got tossed out in 2008, he simmered at home as we fixed up the foreshore and seabed legislation after the Labour New Zealand First stuff up, and we're quite happy to stand and say it was entirely right to give Maori the right of access to justice, something that he and Auntie Helen took away from them. But at least that was an entertaining speech. There was more than I can say for the predictable contribution from Comrade Norman, who simply recited all the same old arguments against asset sales. Look, this debate raises two important questions, and the first one is, do Maori have rights and interests in water? And if so, what are they? And secondly, does the partial sale of shares in Mighty River Power impact on the Crown's ability to recognise those interests? And so the general philosophical ranting about not liking asset sales is really a thing of the past, because that issue was taken to the people in 2011 and the Green Party and the Labour Party and New Zealand First lost. Tough luck. So we move on to the second questions that I've raised this afternoon, and the first is, of course, Maori have rights and interests in water, and we've been recognising those over the last 4 years, be the river the Waipa or the Waikato, the Kaituna, the Rangataiki. We've tried to address legitimate issues in relation to Taniwha Springs, and these are the sorts of issues which this government will continue to address, and including in Ngāti Wai, and I know Ngāti Wai are very keen to have their treaty settlement, and I'm looking forward to dealing with the Right Honourable Member's brother Wayne Peters as we negotiate a good settlement for Ngāti Wai. And at some stage there'll be a very interesting debate about the effect of legislation since for example, Section 21 of the Water and Soil Conservation Act 1967, which says that the sole right to dam any river or stream or divert or take natural water or use natural water is vested in the Crown. And there will be a very interesting debate about the effect of Section 354 of the Resource Management Act, which carries over those provisions and says that nothing in the Resource Management Act affects any right, interest or title to water acquired, accrued or established by or vested in the Crown. And we'll have those debates. But this government is keen to do the right thing and to look at legitimate rights and interests in water. But the second question, which is particularly relevant for this afternoon's debate, although it may have escaped the attention of the previous two speakers, is whether the sale of a minority shareholding in Mighty River Power impacts on the Crown's ability to address the legitimate rights and interests of Maori in water. And we say no. And there was a hearing before the Waitangi Tribunal, and the Waitangi Tribunal agreed with us in every respect, but they introduced the issue of Shares Plus into the equation, and this government believes that it is right and proper to go and have a consultation with affected iwi to determine whether or not what the tribunal have raised could possibly have any merit. And it was an argument on Shares Plus that was raised at the 11th hour by counsel for the Maori Council in the course of the hearing. The tribunals picked up on it, and so we're going out to have a consultation. And over the next 10 or so days, I'll be meeting with people like Ngāti Raukawa and Tainui, Ngāti Koruki Kahukura and so on, and we'll have that discussion, because we're a government that believes that consultation on those issues is right and proper, and then in good faith we'll make decisions about where we go to from there. So this is not a debate, although I imagine that we'll have another New Left contribution from the pretender to the throne, Mr Cunliffe, in a minute or two. But this is not a debate, a general debate about the merits of asset sales. They're the issues that need to be addressed. It's a very narrow question before the Parliament this afternoon, raised by amongst all that cloud and mist of nonsense from Mr Cosgrove, whether or not the potential sale of Mighty River Power impacts on the Crown's ability to address the legitimate rights and interests of iwi in water, and we'll be dealing with that issue in a calm and in a non-confrontational way, something of a surprise I'm sure to Mr Peters, but in a non-confrontational way over the next few weeks before we make a decision on the issue.
Point of order, the Right Honourable Winston.
I think the public want to hear more of this confused legal babble, so I move an extension of time for Mr Finlayson.
Oh, no, the member can't move an extension of time. The next speaker is Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, put aside the fact